I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and thanks so much for being here today. So glad that you could come and spend some time with me and my guest. And we're going to highlight the Opera Theater of Connecticut, and Alan Mann, the artistic director, is my guest today. And Alan, thanks so much for being here in the studio. So nice to have you.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Thank you for inviting us.
Well, I think that what's most important, as you and I know, is the viewer. Why don't we take them back as to your background? Tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, originally I was born in Quebec, and I was studying theater at the Queen's University at Kingston, Ontario, when I met a man by the name of Michael McCowan. We were doing a Shakespearean play, and he saw in me something that nobody else had, and that was the spark to be a director. So he contacted the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, where he had been the head of the school, and they prepared a place for me to go and study directing, which was not one of their regular programs. So I went over and I was studying, and in the course of time they discovered that I could read music. And that was thanks to my mother, who insisted I take piano lessons, which I did not like at all, but I could read music. And on the board was a woman by the name of Dame Joan Sutherland. So I went over to her place one day and I met Maestro Bonning, her husband, and they said, we're going to give you a test. I'm going to sing and you sit here with the score and let me know where I am. So I sat there with the score, and we were in a living room about the size of this studio, and she started to sing from Lucia di Lammermoor. And she sang for a while and she stopped and she said, okay, well, where in the score are we? And I was like this. I'd been to operas before, but in large halls. And this was an amazing voice in a very intimate space. So I said, I'm sorry, I wasn't following. And they laughed and they said, okay, start. And they sang, and she sang, and he played, and they stopped, and I'd say, you're here, and then they would start, and I would find where they were. So I passed the test. And after that, I got shifted into directing opera. So I learned those skills and other skills through classical theater when I was in England. I came back to Canada and ended up working on a musical at the Shakespeare Festival. And the producers liked it so much that they thought they were going to take it to Broadway. So it moved to Broadway. I moved to New York with the show. The show died in 6 weeks, but I stayed. And in the course of that time, I met a woman by the name of Kate Ford, who was producing concerts in New York City. And she had a home in Clinton, Connecticut, a summer home, where she and her sons would go. And so she invited me to come to spend some time at the house. And I came over, and she had a secret plan behind all of this. In the Andrews Memorial Town Hall in Clinton is a phenomenal 500-seat theater with amazing acoustics, built in the 30s. And so it's just really a beautiful hall for singing. And she had always wanted to start some sort of production company, performance company there. And so the two of us applied for, and we got the paperwork through the government to start an opera company. And that started our relationship. We got married, and we have been together with the company for coming on 40 years now. And that's how we started our Opera Theater of Connecticut.
Did you have any desires to perform, or was it always behind the scenes?
Oh, I started as a performer, and that was when Michael McCowan said, quite literally, he called me over and he said, you know, as an actor, you're terrible. And I was crestfallen. And he said, but that's because you think like a director. So I have called Lambda, and they have created a program for you, and you could start in September. Now, this was early August. I was already going to another university for a master's degree, and so I had to call that, cancel, and move to England on very short notice. Since then, I've been on stage a couple of times. There are small roles in opera, like the waiter in La Boheme, or there's a non-singing role in The Barber of Seville that really just does kind of stand-up comedy. So I did those. I've done those on stage. It's a lot of fun.
Did you have a love for opera, or did that grow out of life and time?
That grew. That's one of the, I also do talks about opera. Before every show I do a 30-minute talk about the composer, about the piece. And because I came late to opera, I don't have this, I don't know, zombie belief in everything that is. It's a bizarre art form. That it has existed 400 years is both amazing and a testament to the way it really reaches into people's hearts. So I have a slightly humorous, irreverent view about composers, about the operas, but I think over the years, certainly my love for opera and my knowledge of opera and my, the depth of experience in opera has only just made it more amazing for me.
The Opera Theater of Connecticut, based in Clinton, Connecticut, how did that come to be?
Well, that was, Kate's kind of spurring on, what do you think of this theater? And I looked around. This was an amazing theater for something that was built in 1938. It had wings, it had fly space, it had dressing rooms, it had light electronics for lighting. But now back then, in those days, it was this giant hand crank rheostats where you lifted these bars up and down and rows of lights moved and all of that. When the group that later became Long Wharf Theater performed there in the summer in the 60s, they had air conditioning put in, only on stage, not for the hall, but for the theater and for the stage. So it was really quite a marvelous, marvelous place. And that was when we talked about it and came up with the name, got a pro bono lawyer, applied for all of the documentation that it takes, got our 501c3, which means that we're a charity, so we can accept donations, and started the company with a concert that sold out so quickly we couldn't believe it. There was only one other opera company in the state of Connecticut then, and that was up in Hartford, and it didn't do anything in the summer. So we did this opera highlights concert, and we were expecting, well, maybe if we sell 200, 300 seats, we'll be fine. We sold out the 500, and we were weeks away from the show, so we were pretty thrilled.
Now, being that you're in Clinton, Connecticut, are you finding that there's an audience that's coming, that's local, that's out of the state? Where do the people come from? How do they find you?
Well, we've been around for 35 years, so some people have found us and some people amazingly have not. Our audience is really quite diverse and from a wide area. So we have really the locals: Clinton, Madison, Westbrook, Guilford, Branford, Old Saybrook, the Limes. A lot of people in that area. But people people from further north in Hartford didn't have to worry about coming down. They could see 3 operas a year in Hartford with Connecticut Opera. But that closed, that went dark, and so there was no opera being performed up there. So they started to come down to hear us, and surprisingly they stayed and have been supporters and audience members. There are, our normal time frame is performances the second or third weekend in August based on the calendar. And many people come up to the shoreline, as we all know, during the summer. And so the audience base grows, the population grows. And so, we have people who are really from Texas or from Oregon who come to this area in the summer, and they come to the show. And then based on the show, whenever we do any early music, so if we do Handel or Gluck, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of people who come down from Boston because Boston has a big early music crowd.
Performers, where do you get your performers from?
Well, again, from all over. We very specifically wanted to be what's called, in the old days, a middle ground company. Now, the connotation behind that now has changed, so we don't say that anymore. But in those days, it was a group that not only brought in professional singers. So we had singers doing roles, and really we have about 18, 19 of them who within 5 years were singing at the Met. So if you hear those voices in a 500-seat hall, it's really quite amazing. These were people who had national, international resumes and were coming to sing with us for various reasons, often a role they had never done before. We can talk about our rehearsal structure, but it really helped them along. And then for secondary roles and the chorus, we really looked to Connecticut singers. Again, many of them were young singers, with no real names, no real shows on their resumes, and they were looking to not only perform roles, but to be on stage with professional artists who were always so kind, except for one, almost always so kind, and sharing information with everybody and helping them along, and you would see them, big major professional baritones taking young baritones aside, talking to them and giving them coachings on the side about how to make their voices better. So the blending of community members, when shows required dance, there was a dance company that we always worked with, and they would have anywhere from 5-year-olds to 20-year-olds dancing in the show. And so, our audience comes, and our professionals, singers come from, pretty much all over the country.
Because I deal with arts and entertainment all the time, the number one thing that always comes up is COVID and the pandemic. How has it affected your industry in general?
Oh, the industry in general took a big hit. I know restaurants, everybody took a big hit, so I'm not going to say we were worse, but everything that we did stopped. There was no working around it. Singers were doing concerts in a room if they were lucky enough to be married to or had very good friends with who were, accompanists. They would perform a concert in their living room and put it on air, put it up on the internet so that people could see it. Anything to keep going. We were 1 week away from doing a major concert with the Sanibel Music Festival. It was our 25th year going down with them. We were a week away from getting into the planes. They had just opened on a Friday night, and Saturday we got the call, we have to cancel the season. We had a full opera planned for August. Now this involves, because of the show we were doing, we had 12 singers. We had a chorus of 24 or more, an orchestra of 25, crew. We had, super title operators, ushers, box office people. We had everybody organized, and we just had to stop. No other opera company, no other arts groups were performing. You couldn't even rehearse. You couldn't bring people together in a room. For 18 months, it was very, very brutal. Some singers in the middle ground never recovered. They went off and have started other careers, and others just made it through. And now, we see a light, and everybody is coming back cheerfully, but really with severe guidelines. Rehearsing with masks on. I used to be deeply involved with the Hartford Chorale, and they can't plan. They have something planned for March and June of 2022. You can't get 150 people in a room and have them all singing. And they have these singers' masks, but they're ineffective. So everybody took a severe hit. It was quite brutal, I think, for everyone.
Okay, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey, Bobo. Do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
I'll be seeing you.
No, the thing I've missed the most during this entire time, this pandemic, has been you.
I love playing to a live audience. There's nothing like it.
The COVID-19 vaccines are going to help us all get back to the moments we miss.
It's totally normal to have questions. I did too.
That's why it's so important to get informed.
So ask your doctor and get the facts. It's up to you.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I am Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, thanks so much for being here today. Well, we continue on with the Opera Theater of Connecticut, based in Clinton, Connecticut. And Alan Mann, the artistic director, continues to be my guest. And Alan, we were talking about the pandemic and you mentioned recovery. Let's talk about recovery. How are things going?
Things are starting to look much, much brighter. And between the vaccine and people's preparedness to really work hard to, not risk infection or risk spreading infection, primarily by wearing masks even while they're in the audience. That has really started to open things up. We did a welcome back concert on August 20th in a church in Madison, the Lutheran Church. The church gave us a maximum number, which was much less than their capacity. We sold out 2 weeks before the concert was to play. Everybody in the audience had to wear masks. They also all had to be vaccinated, show their vaccine cards. All of the artists had to show their vaccine cards. The same thing for, we're getting ready to do the Barber of Seville in November, which isn't our normal time frame, but we really wanted to do an opera, full opera this year. So everyone in the show, the orchestra, the singers, the crew, they have to, send us proof of their vaccine. So that makes everybody safe. When you tell the artists, we're requiring vaccines, there's no pushback. They're all vaccinated and they want to feel safe when they perform. The audience is going to probably have to wear masks the whole time, even while they're watching the show. And that's strain, that's a lot of pressure, but they're all prepared to do it. I mean, it's on everything we send out, everything we notify people, this is what your rules are. All over the country, ballet companies, orchestras, they're all getting back together. Audience is really desperate to go back to live arts. I have wonderful recordings, wonderful that I listen to. But the difference of sound coming out of a human body or coming out of an instrument in the room, there are actual vibrations that come to you, that you feel it viscerally. You don't just take it in through the ears. And even if you have wonderful speakers, it's paper vibrating. It's not a human body, or it's not aged wood, or that sort of thing. And that's what makes a live performance better. And we think it's going to be much better for funding in the arts, because people are always saying, well, we have better things to spend our money on. Well, guess what? Without the arts, people really, really are not happy.
Before we forget, let's talk about the website.
Yes.
What will the viewer find if they visit the website?
Well, when you land on our home page, it actually scrolls through photos from previous productions, so you can see some of the work we've done. You can go to a listing of our 2021 season. That's where you buy tickets. It's about things about our concert that we performed. It's about the opera that's coming up. It's a little teaser about next season. There's a link to videos of clips from previous performances, or parts of my 30-minute talks from before the shows. So there's a lot of things. You can spend a lot of time looking at what's on the website. The seating chart, of course, of the hall, so you can see what seats you want, that sort of thing.
The schedule. Let's talk about what's happening. You mentioned this fall of 2021. What does 2022 look like?
Well, it looks like it's coming back. The show we canceled, the Sanibel Music Festival, which was a concert of Andrew Lloyd Webber, they've asked us to bring back that show. So it's 2 years later, and they're all set. We're looking to announce the opera that we're going to be doing in August, but we will be performing in August again this year. I do a lot of talking outside of Opera Theater of Connecticut. I get hired a lot to do various opera talks and lectures and so on. So those are picking up. They were normally virtual, but I'm doing one in a couple of days from now, and that's actually going to be live. The great thing was it was booked in one hall, and they had so many people they've had to go to another one. So again, people are eager to be somewhere where something is happening, live music, live performance. Some of the other organizations that hire us are more cautious about what their plans are. When at a certain point, when you cancel a show, we have to pay the artists anyway. So, in Sanibel, we were a week away. They had done all their work, they had learned all their music, they had, gotten everything all together, and suddenly we have to say, well, no. Well, that's not fair to a professional artist. You have to pay them off. So, when we cancel shows and when a producer cancels a booked event, there's penalties involved with that. So they're not sure if they're going to come back yet. But it looks everywhere better. The Bushnell is booking performances, the ballet companies are back. So we think that 2022, is going to be kind of like 2019, so that things will be building and we'll all be back.
One of the things that is important to me is the viewer. Mm-hmm. And there's probably somebody that is thinking about performing an opera, that is an artist that would like to become an opera singer. What is your advice as to how somebody could become an opera singer themselves and get on stage?
Well, you need to have good coaching, good training. When we started here, even Yale and UConn didn't have opera programs to talk about, but those have developed. Even some of Eastern Connecticut has a wonderful program. There are some great programs all around the state. So training and education is very good, but nothing beats performing with a professional opera company. And let me explain. If you do an opera at a college or a university, you're going to spend months on it. Right? You're going to have coachings with a teacher, and then you're going to have, if it's in a foreign language, you'll have language coachings and all of that, and you have rehearsals. I've worked with universities on productions before, and it's a long-term commitment. When you do a show that's professional, we have an extended period from start to finish. It's 3 weeks. That's a long time in opera. Normally it's 2 weeks. You've got to get in there. You cannot not know your music first day, and you have to work and you have to memorize, and the next day you have to come back knowing what you did the day before as well as new things. So that's really what works. A lot of young singers started in the chorus. So we, in our chorus we have young singers who are looking to develop skills to, really get on stage and do roles, but they need to be on stage. The way to be on stage is to be on stage. And so if you start in the chorus, you start with small roles, and you just have to audition. The audition process, my son is an actor, and he talks about auditions, and I just don't have the whatever inside to deal with the constant, well, you're good, but not for this show. So, you have to put up with that and just get out there and work.
We are starting to run out of time, but I don't want to forget, what does the future look like for opera? I mean, are people going to discover it even more than they know about it now? Yes, and over its history. So opera technically starts in like 1600. That's the part of the talk that I'm actually giving in a few days. It's about the history of opera. In its 400 years, opera has, in certain ways, reinvented itself every so often. So if you look at certain shows, Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita, they fit the qualifications of what an opera is, right? The way it's through composed, there are certain aspects. So you get into a thing about what is opera. Classical opera, if people go to it, they're always amazed at how moved they are. There's the movie, I think it's Moonstruck, where Cher goes for the first time to La Boheme. And at the end of it, she's weeping. I mean, we've had people with those experiences. We've been the first opera they've seen. We perform in a 500-seat hall. That's very close. And it's people have a strong visceral reaction. People say, I don't like opera. Have you been to opera? No. All right, well, come.
try it once. We're doing the Barber of Seville in November, and our audience, because we poll them regularly, wants comedies in English. So we're doing the Barber of Seville in English. It's a great first opera. It's very funny. You'll know 3-4 of the tunes. You'll recognize the Largo ad factotum, even from Bugs Bunny. So it's a great show, and opera as a whole, I think, is really going to survive. I don't think we're on a decline at all.
Well, we just have a moment left. Any closing thoughts for the viewers?
If you've not heard of Opera Theater of Connecticut, come and see us. Come and take a look at the Barber of Seville. We think it's going to be a great representation of what we do. It'll be a good time. There are other opera companies throughout the state. Go and see them if they're closer, and give it a try.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Deborah. It was great to be here.
And I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. I hope that you have enjoyed the show, as I hope you've enjoyed all the other shows. I hope you have a super day today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.